students. Today we'll be talking about warehouse and transportation, which is Unit 4 of Fundamentals of Logistics, and the current session deals with the transportation aspect of the syllabus. Transportation is a backbone of the economy. It plays a very vital role in the supply chain of the goods, that is right from the point of manufacturing of the goods till the goods reaches the consumers. In fact, transportation is so important that almost 50% of the total logistics cost comes from transportation. So, given this importance, we need to seriously look into how to control cost by using efficient and effective modes of transport from reaching the goods from one point to the other point. Well, when I use the word transportation, most of you would always link it to your vehicles that you own, maybe a car, maybe a motorcycle, or maybe a bus. Well, all these modes of transportation are for personal transportation. Buses are for public transport to commute from one place to other. In this session, we will be looking at transportation from a business point of view. The commercial vehicles, the importance of, well, rail, lorry, truck, trailer, ship, air, and not the personal transportation. And now we can get started. Transportation is a major contributor to the Indian economy. In fact, the activity of transportation actually physically connects the business's supply chain. These supply chain members normally constitutes suppliers, manufacturers, distributors, and this forms one of the major influencers for reaching the goods on time, in the same form, with no damage with the quality, and in same quantity to the customer, and this finally leads to customer satisfaction with the company. So, effectively managing transportation is very essential in logistics management. This will basically allow the entire supply chain of the goods, right from the farm to fork, to run smoothly and seamlessly. So, let us first understand, with this introduction, the definition of transportation. As it is in front of you, transportation is defined as the movement of goods and persons from place to place and the various means by which such movement is accomplished. This is the definition of transportation. Well, we have to focus on certain words mentioned in this definition. It says movement of goods and persons by various means. So, on these two words, let us focus once again. Here, when the word transportation is defined, it considers both goods, that is for commercial purpose, and persons, which means it's for personal purpose. So, now comes a very important word which is known as freight. So, throughout the literature and textbooks and newspaper, you will find the word freight written in the business columns of all these different sources of information like magazines and newspapers. Let us now elaborate what the word freight and transportation means. In a normal parlance, freight and transportation are used interchangeably. At a given context, in a given situation, the words just flow out between two officers or two male or female colleagues in an academics. But both of them have a distinct meaning. Let's understand that. Freight refers to transporting goods. It may be commodities, it can be liquid, it can be gaseous, or it can be material goods. But freight does not include transportation of people. Now comes the word transportation. Transportation involves the shipment of both people and materials. And that is the reason why in a normal discussion, it is very casual to use the word transportation, despite meaning that the person who has used the word is actually talking about transporting for business purpose some goods or commodities, etc. Now, in the definition, the word means is also important, because again, in normal literature or the textbooks, magazines, newspapers, the means of transportation is always interchanged with the mode of transportation. Essentially, both means the same. With this, I hope you have got some clarity with the definition of transportation. Once again, it is defined as movement of goods and or, we'll use the word and or persons from place to place, and the various means by which such movement is accomplished. Now, let us look at this picture. The title of this picture is Freight Movement. As you can see from points 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If you look at this picture, you will know the importance of transportation. I am sure all of you watching this video are wearing clothes, garments, t-shirts, etc. If we use a simple example of a shirt, look at the process given here. Though this picture is never talking about any particular product, rather than it focuses more on the freight movement, we will exemplify this with a textile garment that you are wearing, maybe a shirt or a salwar or a kurta. So let's see what happens. Point number 1, raw material source. Point 2 is a processing unit. Point 3 is a port. Point 4 is a distribution center. Point 5 further goes to distribution center, which is known as a city distribution center, and then it goes to an urban facility, and finally to the consumer. All places the word transportation from one point to the other is very important, as it has to run smoothless and seamless. So, if at point number 1, the raw material source, let's say you're wearing a cotton shirt. So, cotton is transported to the processing unit. Cotton is plucked from a plant and it has a very varying form with lot of dirt. In the processing plant, lot of activities happen, from removing the dust to making it into a bale, from bale to a sliver, from sliver to a yarn, from yarn to a fabric. It may all be done in one factory or processing unit, or it can be done in multiple factories, which is not shown in this picture. But however, if it's a multiple factories where this is processed, then you need to divide the picture processing unit between multiple points, and between each points you have to involve transportation. So let's say the garment is ready, for our example, in a processing unit. That means right from a cotton that is grown in the field, it is transported to a factory or a processing unit. It has been turned into a garment in the manufacturing plant. From this, it is being now sent to another locality, where through a truck, it is to a port. When I use the word port at point number 3, it's basically, it can be an airport, it can be a seaport, it can be any port. But in this particular example, as you can see in front of you, we are talking about a seaport. So from there, the port, the goods are loaded in a container, as you can see the symbol in front of you. And from there, the ship sails on a containerized vessel and finally reaches the port of destination, and that can be a regional distribution center. From the regional distribution center, you have a truck taking the goods from there and again sending it to a city distribution center. Let's say you stay in a city of north of Maharashtra. From north of Maharashtra, the goods has been taken to a city like Mumbai. So we call it the city distribution center. From the city distribution center, it is taken to urban locality. An urban locality can be any of the suburbs of Mumbai. It can be Dadar, it can be Bandra, it can be Andheri, etc. And from there, again, the goods reach the consumer. Well, at this stage, that is point number 7, the consumer can directly go to the urban locality, which can be a retail store, from where he picks up the goods, or he can book it online from where the dispatch happens through a transportation medium. So with this figure from point 1 to 7, if you can see, we have in front of you, just for example, we have railroad, we have roadways, we have sea shipment. So there are different modes of transportation to reach a different location based on speed, based on convenience, based on cost, and there are so many parameters that needs to be studied in the freight movement. That is what makes freight movement extremely exciting topic. Now, we'll understand transportation. As we all know, various modes of transportation such as human beings, camels, horses, donkeys, bullock carts have been used since olden times. In fact, there is evidence of these modes of transport in Indian or Roman or Greek or Persian civilizations. Transportation is not at all a very old topic. It is an age-old topic. It has been happening since time immemorial. So, it is not something which has started only in the 19th or the 20th century. So, we need to look at transportation from the ancient times. As on date, many of these old means of transportation are not wiped out from the supply chain system. In fact, they still exist. There are still human beings carrying. There are still camels carry in the desert. There are still horses in certain localities in the world. There are still donkeys used for transportation. There are still bullock carts used for transportation in the village side. In fact, if you look at the many products, especially fast-moving consumer goods like sachets of shampoo or small sachets of ketchup or confectionaries like chocolates or like candy bars, if you have gone to a small shop which sells only small quantities, you will find, might be, sometimes a person would have come with sacks of goods in his bicycle and he is giving all those goods from the bicycle to the small shop owner, or normally what we call as Kirana stores. Now, you might have guessed it, on what vehicle did he come? Which is a bicycle. That means even bicycle is used as a mode of transportation today at a business level. Why will bicycles be used? That may be a very good topic of interest, because if the distribution, that is a company that manufactures shampoo, wants to reach to the remotest place with their goods in a retail store, then sometimes transportation may not be available, which we call from road. There may be not proper roads, there may be no rail available. In such places, bicycles are the ideal mode. And especially when the unit cost of the goods are very high or very low. Based on this, companies decide whether we need to use mass movement of goods, expensive transportation, or will use very low cost transportation. So based on this, for a Kirana store which requires small quantity and the unit value of the goods is very low, bicycles will be an ideal mode of transport. Hence, these are different means of transportation which is available. However, for this study, we may not consider camels or horses or bullock carts to understand transportation, because the modern economy of India stands on various different modes that we'll be talking to you soon. The third point in understanding transportation is efficiency. The modern economy today talks about sustainability towards environmental pollution, and in both the cases, transportation plays a very, very effective role. Efficient transportation not only does reduce pollution but also leads to industrialization and a better standard of living. I think this statement requires some little elaboration. What is the meaning of industrialization? If raw material doesn't reach the goods or the factory on time, then most of the factory will be waiting for the raw material and have to stop the machine. And because of this, cost of wages and cost of stoppages of the machine will increase the unit cost, and this will reduce the business profits, and many businesses will suffer. And because of this, many business people might have to stop their operations, or the new entrepreneurs will be afraid to start any such business because of the requirement of timely quantity and quality of raw material. That means transportation has given a very big push to industrialization in all the economies of the world. It also leads to increased standard of living, definitely, because when the goods are available, customers have a wide variety. They can choose the quality of the goods based on the price that they can afford. Now, in the same way, if you look at the previous word, industrialization, because of industrialization, more and more companies come into business. That will increase employment. When employment increases, also income at an individual level also improves. And when income improves, he or she can go for more number of goods or a better quality of the goods. And that improves the standard of living. The fourth point is transportation is extremely important for procurement, manufacturing and market distribution. See, transportation plays a role in every stage of supply chain. Procurement of raw material, manufacturing, that means using this raw material and processing it into some finished goods, and once the goods are completed, packing, and finally distribution. Of course, distribution is just a design, but to reach the goods to the stated distributor or wholesaler or semi-wholesaler or retailer, you require transportation. That is why we use the word market distribution. And now in the modern economy of India, all of us can witness digital transformation in various facets of our life, and in similarly transportation too. There are various changes that is occurring slowly, albeit consistently. So digital transformation in logistics and transportation industry has led to very intelligent transportation system, which is an integrated system that implements a range of communication, control, vehicle sensing using electronic technologies. So we have started from age-old modes of transportation to the modern transportation. I hope understanding transportation will lead us to understand this topic in a much in-depth manner. Alright, so we'll go to the next slide. Now we'll understand transportation very conceptually. So first we'll understand the principles that guides transportation. Principles are, first one is economy of scale and the second is economy of distance. In both the cases, let us describe economy of scale first and then go for economy of distance. What does both of this principle give an insight into? It says that for transportation, as the consignment size increases in terms of its weight or volume, then the cost per unit of transportation only decreases. So, transportation cost per unit of weight decreases when the quantity increases. That is being transported. That's the reason you find transportation vehicles like a 16-wheel truck or a large cargo of sea vessel which is carrying about hundreds of containers in it, or several rakes attached to a train being transported from one city in one state to another city in another state. Because larger the capacity of the vehicles, it is less expensive per unit of weight than compared to the small capacity vehicles. So, this is the point related to economy of scale. Now, we will understand what is economy of distance. Economy of distance is nothing but the cost per unit related to distance decreases when distance increases. That means for smaller distances, normally vehicle owners are very reluctant to transport because they may talk to you and say, oh, it is not viable to us. Why do they say this? That is because a hidden logic of economy of distance, that is what they are speaking about. This can be very clear in a diagram that will show you in the next slide. Look at the slide in front of you. You have got two figures, one on the left hand side and other on the right hand side. The left hand side speaks about economy of scale. So, what did we speak about economy of scale? Look at the x-axis and the y-axis. On the x-axis, we have mentioned weight of shipment. On the y-axis, we have mentioned cost per unit of weight. Please understand, here it's not the cost of production. As soon as we use the word cost, it means cost of transportation. Okay? So, cost per unit of weight only in terms of transportation. In our study or our subject, we say cost of total per unit of weight. If you see the red line and it is sloping downwards, that means initially when the weight is less, then the cost per unit of weight is very high. As the weight of shipment increases, you can see the curve. The cost per unit of weight steadily goes down. And more the weight of the shipment, well, of course, that is based on the capacity of the vehicle itself, the cost per unit of weight also goes down. Next concept we speak about is economy of distance. That is on the right hand side. Look at the economy of distance graph. On the x-axis, we have mentioned distance. On the y-axis, we have mentioned cost per unit of distance. As we can see here, when the distances are very short, then the cost per unit of distance is very high. And as the distance, that means transporting the goods from one point to the other, is very long, then the cost per unit of distance goes down. So, if you are an entrepreneur in the business of transportation, what would you prefer? In order to make better profits, you would always prefer the weight of the shipment to be high, so also the distance to be long. Alright? So that is the fundamental principles in transportation which is very essential for us to understand. Now, we'll go to the major functions of transportation. The functions of transportation can be listed in several points running into several pages. But in this slide, we are just focusing on some major functions of transportation. Point number one is product movement. Second is product storage. What do you mean by product movement? Products that are materials that can come in the form of components. It can be spare parts, it can be assemblies, it can be work in process goods. These materials need to be moved from one place to the other, or rather, it has to be moved from one stage of the production to the next stage of the manufacturing process. Well, if it's a finished goods that finally people like you and me use it, maybe a garment, maybe a toothpaste, maybe a soap, then we speak about the delivery process. That's the next stage. So, if it has to reach the ultimate customer, product movement is very essential, and that is one of the major functions of transportation. A very little known function of transportation is product storage, which is very essential to know. Many people ignore this, but we need to focus on this. It says transportation provides temporary storage. Yes, very much. What does they mean? Let's say the goods have been transported from one city in one state of India, maybe south of India, to another city in the north of India. The time required will be in multiple days. Let's say the goods are loaded from the southern tip of India and it has to go to the NCR locality of north of India. Between these two, it has to crisscross several states, several borders, and there may be n number of warehouses available where the truck will be taking the goods there, unloading it and keeping it in the warehouse, and then after relaxing or after repairing the truck or after filling the petrol or after taking a night nap, they will again reload it and then move the transportation vehicle to the next destination. Is it true? That is how it happens. For long journeys, it takes more time than what an average Google map tells you, especially if it's a goods carrier. So, this analysis of product storage comes from the fact that it is the cost of loading and unloading and storage of the goods in the warehouse all put together, you need to summate it versus simply keeping the goods in the vehicle. Instead of that, if you keep the goods in vehicle, the cost of loading the cost of loading the goods in the following morning and storage, that means we need to pay rent to the warehouse owner for storing the goods, everything will be nullified if we simply keep the goods in the vehicle. So, there are two major functions that we find in transportation. First one is product movement and product storage. So conceptually, we have tried to understand two important dimensions of transportation. So first one is we try to know the principles in transportation, principles behind the transportation, which is basically economies of scale and economies of distance. And then we try to understand the functions of transportation. One is product movement and product storage. Alright. Now, we'll speak about characteristics of freight transportation. The characteristics of freight transportation includes the kind of product the transportation vehicle carries, the distance that it covers, and the mode of transportation that is being used for sending the goods. So, point 1 is product type, second is distance coverage, and third is the means of transport. We will elaborate each one separately. First we'll take up is product type. So, in transportation of freight, that is goods and materials, we have already used the words assemblies, work in process, materials, commodities, etc. But these are very generic terms. And in the business of transportation, if we ask a transporter, I want to send material from one place to other, he may not understand what we need to transport. So, for that we should be very specific when we classify the products. Here are the basic classification in the next slide. Product types can come in the form of First, dry bulk. Second is wet bulk. Third is refrigerated. Fourth is containerization. Fifth is break bulk. So, product types are categorized very differently. Let us understand each one of them because we'll be revisiting this in several other topics down the line in one or the other form. For this slide related to this topic, we will restrict ourselves to understanding these words as product types. Let's understand dry bulk. A dry bulk are materials, normally coal, food grains, metals pieces. Second is wet bulk. Wet bulk are related to liquid or frozen material or even fresh meat and fish and any goods producing liquid. The third one is refrigerated transportation. In a refrigerated transportation, the product types are meats and vegetables which cannot be transported at room temperature or a temperature where very high. Normally trucks or rail transit between two different cities, two different states where there is a big variation in the weather conditions. One state may be very cool and if we go to the other state it may be very hot. In such conditions, perishable goods like vegetables and fruits get spoiled. For that reason, we have refrigerated transportation where temperature control is maintained and the freshness of vegetables and fruits inside, including meat and fish, are maintained. The fourth one is containerization. This is rather a very different word where it doesn't focus on the product itself but in the style in which the goods are sent from one place to the other. Let's understand what the style means. Containerization involves carrying goods of uniform shape and size in containers. Now, the word uniform shape and size has to be understood conceptually. So, as I told, vegetables and fruits, do they come in uniform shape and size? No. So, can't they be containerized? Well, it depends on their perishability and other things, but it's not, they can't be containerized. So let's take an example that I put in the bracket like textile fabric. Now, when we say textile fabric, does it come in the standard shape? Yes, they can be in 44 inches width or 58 inches width. Length can be anywhere between 1 meter or to 60,000 to 2 lakh meters. That can normally go in a container from the world where containerization has emerged. So, what happens in a textile fabric? Let's understand. Once the fabric comes out of the machine operator cuts them with equal lengths. Well, some standards are maintained between different countries and different thumb rules are always there. So let's say each factory cuts the fabric into 30 yards. Now, whether the fabric comes in 44 inches width or 58 inches width, which is standard, you will all get standard length too, that is 30 yards. These 30 yards are rolled and a bunch of 30 yards and 30 yards etc. are grouped together and packed in a carton, which we call as a cardboard box. So, fabric that is rolled on cardboard tubes are put in a cardboard carton. Based on the quality of the carton that is used, let's say the packaging comes to 600 yards per carton. Now, all the carton are of standard size? Absolutely. These cartons are strapped and labeled and then put in a container. And we can put, based on the total quantity required by the customer and the capacity of the container, certain fixed amount. With this, I hope you can understand containerization is basically bringing uniformity in the shape and the size of the product in such a way that uniform shape and size goods can be sent into uniform shape and size of containers. Containerization has become so revolutionary and has increased cargo movements throughout the world manifolds. That is why containerization is a very important word that has to go throughout the syllabus of transportation. The last part is break bulk. Break bulk is a product type that is transported in bags, in boxes, in drums, in barrels, or some items of extreme length or size. What does this mean? Yes, certain items of products, without naming them, cannot be just dumped into a container or in a truck. It has to be put in a bag. Let's say we take postal envelopes. It has to be sent in a bag. So it is put in a gunny bag and the gunny bag is dumped into the cargo unit or the freight or the vehicle. It can be a train. In the same way, the other part says extreme length or size. Well, wind turbines. Wind turbines are so big, space shuttle parts. Normally, space shuttles need to be transported from different cities and they need to traverse various different countries. Normally, transportation means used is always train. The train is fit with big wings, big span, gig machineries, all in knockdown conditions. However, it is not so small. But for example, a wind turbine is so huge. It has to be placed inside a truck or a train in such a way that the product inside doesn't get damaged. But the entire unit cannot be shipped. It is impossible to ship. No vehicle can carry such a big unit. So this is known as extreme length or size. We call this as bulk break. So now we have finished the product types. As of now, I hope you have to think, is any other product left out from the 5 given product types? Yes, in this world we have millions and millions of products. Different names, different variety, different packaging size. In order not to get complicated or confusing to write down each of these products, we have categorized it into different types. So, point 1 to 5, the dry bulk, wet bulk, refrigerated, containerized and bulk break are different product types. Now, we shall go to the next part, that is the distance. So, in order to understand the characteristics of transportation, freight movement is divided into 3 parts. Basically, freight movement starts from point of pickup to point of drop. When we use the word freight movement, we should immediately know that we are talking from pickup to drop. It is not always the end user that we need to consider or any other next step of transportation. No, it is only from pickup to drop. This pickup to drop has 3 different types here. One we call as long haul, regional haul, second one, and third one is urban haul. So, what we mean by a long haul? Long haul is pickup drop. That is movement of goods across the country, traversing different states. As I told you, southern point of India till the northern tip of India. It is truly a long haul. Or we take the goods from Maharashtra to Assam. It's a very long haul. Next is a regional haul. Let's say we speak about central India or south of India. South of India becomes a regional haul. It's a region. We can define region in terms of a given geographical area like a state or multiple states. Movement of goods within a region or a state is a regional haul. Finally, urban haul. Urban haul is basically movement of goods within a city. Let's say we stay in a city like Chennai or Bangalore or Mumbai. Then goods has to be sent from the distribution unit to the retail store. For this we call movement of goods within a city. That means as soon as you see these three different freight movements, you should be able to analyze what are the different sizes of vehicles for transportation used. What can be the different modes of transportation? Can we use a very long truck for transporting from one point in the city of Bangalore to the other point in the city of Bangalore? Not possible. In Mumbai, it's not possible. In Chennai, it's not possible. Because these are metropolitan cities. These are very busy cities. Traffic is very, very crowded. So, such vehicles cannot run on the roads with such heavy passenger vehicular traffic. In such cases, you might require a smaller van or a jeep to transport the goods. So, now comes the third part, that is the modes of transport. Now, in the modes of transport, we have mentioned road, that is roadways, rail, that is railways, water, that is sea shipment, air, that is air shipment, and finally pipe. So, the modes of transportation, the major modes of transportation is listed in front of you. It is used for long haul, regional haul, and urban haul. For considering, after taking into consideration various aspects related to transportation, and finally, what are the product types? Is it a dry bulk? Is it a wet bulk? Is it containerized? Is it break bulk? Etc. So, the next part we go is, let's have some small knowledge about the share of freight logistics in India. The data is barely, well, not very recent, but I think 2019, that is just before the start of the problem that the whole world faced. We have seen here that for this year, we have considered road, rail, sea, and also inland waterway and pipeline. However, air shipment is not in this data. But however, if we look at different modes of transport, we see here that in India, the highest percentage share for freight logistics is with road. So, now we know how important lorries and trucks that moves on your, or trailers, what we call, move on the road, especially on the highway. They are the backbone of the economy. That's why we say transportation is so important. Next is rail. Rail, that is rail freight, not rail passenger, once again, to remind you. Rail carries only just 27%. Now, freight logistics in India, that is sea, is 5%. Well, don't be misled by this figure. We are not talking about goods that goes out of the country through sea to other part of the country that we normally talk about is exports. We are not talking about exports or imports here, because that is a part of the final module or unit of your subject. Here we are talking about sea being used for transporting from one place in India to the other place in India. I hope all of you realize India is blessed with sea bordering its countries, whether it's at Arabian Sea or the Bay of Bengal. And we have several ports, from Haldia port in Calcutta to Visakhapatnam to Chennai port to Mangalore port, and from there one of the biggest port of India, that is Nhava Sheva port, that is in Konkan region in Maharashtra. So, sea shipment here is barely very minimal. Yes, it is very minimal. It is only 5%. Inland waterway has taken a precedence, and the government is also looking at ways for various reasons to see whether they can increase the share of the freight logistics through this mode, that is inland waterway. Currently it is only 2%. So, I have given a small write-up below for a better understanding what is inland waterway. Inland waterway is nothing but waterways That includes lakes, channels and rivers. So, as we see here, India has a potential of 1,45,000 kilometers of inland waterways. Why not we tap into these resources and reduce much of the goods that is sent through road by using this route, that is through rivers, lakes and channel. With this, road congestions will be less and definitely environmentally the country will improve through better or reduced pollution levels and better weather conditions. Now, let us look at the various transportation choices available and how businesses need to evaluate. The table in front of you has got several columns starting with the left hand side. The first column speaks about characteristics of all the modes of transportation, which is common and which is a right way to evaluate each transportation mode. Listed down in these characteristics are first speed, next is the cost, third is the loss or damage, then frequency, followed by dependability, capacity and availability of the transportation mode. Well, as we know that each country's infrastructure differs. Some are very advanced countries in the world, some are middle income countries, some are very low income or poor countries. Normally, in countries which are very low income, most of the infrastructure for transportation may be even unavailable. By meaning of transportation, I just don't mean trucks or lorries or trailers or even a railway network, but I'm talking about even basic roads where people can travel from one place to the other. So most of the time there is always what we call as the Kacha road between one city to the other, and the outskirts of the city, the road conditions are very, very poor. So considering that different countries have different levels of transportation infrastructures, we need to be looking into the common characteristics, how each of the mode of transportation should be analyzed. Well, this slide gives you a superior insight into how businesses basically make a decision. Definitely for businesses, it would have become an experience or a thumb rule or information and the knowledge that they keep gathering from businesses, customers, suppliers, even sometimes competitors or research reports, magazines, etc. But however, it is very important for students of logistics to know how logistics infrastructures are characterized as. So we'll take the first characteristics of the mode of transportation, that is speed. Here, below each mode of transportation, that is air, pipeline, highway, rail and water, how each one fares with these characteristics. One is the number given for a fastest mode of transportation and the fifth is the slowest. But if we look here, the fastest mode of transportation is air shipment, and definitely all of us know that to reach from one location to the other, many people take air as their quick mode of transportation, so they can reach the city very quickly. Even from city to city or from state to state or even from country to country, air shipment is always the most preferred mode because it is the fastest. So we know that from Bombay port to the Dubai port, that is in UAE, an air may take not more than 3 hours, but for the same distance covered by sea, it may take 12 days. So you know the difference between it. So this is followed by speed being air, the top one. The second one is the road, In road we call it highway, and highway is much faster than rail. Well, this is quite debatable. It depends on the distance and the network with which it is passing through. But sometimes in some situations the highway and rail may not have much difference. So that's why they are very close to each other. And lastly, and then comes the pipeline, and lastly it is water, that is sea shipment. Now the next characteristics is speed. After that is cost. In cost, if we see, the matters are reversed completely. Well, in cost, if we see, 1 denotes the highest cost, which is actually not very favorable for the businesses, whereas 5 denotes the least cost. Although speed for air is highest, now we know that it is also very, very expensive. It is very costly. On the reverse side, although the speed of sea shipment is very slow, the slowest among all modes of shipment, it is the least expensive among all modes of shipment. So, because of this reason, businesses need to take a careful evaluation across their budgetary constraints as well as lead time and delivery of the goods for the customer. Next part is the how pipeline, highway and rail fare. If we look at here, as per the cost is concerned, highway is a bit, that is road is a bit costly compared to rail. Well, these two things are always debatable. Why? Because both of them run on diesel. In some countries, coal is still used to fuel rail, but countries like India use diesel motors, and diesel is used to run trailers, etc. However, India will also advance to electric. We already have electric trains, but not for very long distances. But we also need to bring in for heavy vehicles fueled through certain alternative energies. But at this moment, considering both run on diesel, we know that for road it is more expensive than rail, and pipe again is less expensive, but again it's more expensive than water. So that's what makes sea shipment the most favorable mode of shipment. So now we'll go to the next characteristics. The loss and damage that can happen to the products that is carried by the vehicles in transit, sometimes even during loading and unloading of the goods. Well, there are a lot of criteria that has to be considered here when we talk about loss and damage. But initially, to have a insight into the characterization of different modes of transport across the loss and damage, we find that the least damage can happen across the pipeline, whereas there's a huge possibility of damage that can happen across the rail mode of shipment. Well, if we see here, the least is pipe and followed by sea. Well, this is given the consideration that most of the ports in the country are having terminal handling equipment, advanced technologies for lifting, that is through cranes, and there is very less manual intervention which can cause any damage during loading and unloading. But however, during transit, sea shipments are quite safe, but in case of ships going on high seas, if there is a natural calamity, then the damage is insurmountable. It is very huge. The whole ship can sink. But such cases are very rare because advanced weather forecasts are made with high accuracy, and the shipping captain takes a calculated decision during any voyage about the obstructions that can come because of natural situations. Now, this is followed by air. Air causes not much damage compared to the road, and followed by the rail. Well, again, the loss and damage through road or rail is again debatable, because it depends on the type of the goods and how much is the amount of technology incorporated in these two different modes of shipment. There are certain trailers which charges very high, but the roadways are quite equipped. But when there is more manual labor involved, or if the roads conditions are very poor in a country, then you can easily frequently reverse the numbers from rail to highway. If the roads are not good, definitely the truck cannot travel at high speeds. If they cannot travel at high speed, they don't reach in time. For that reason, they need to maintain a steady speed, and with a bumpy road or a kitcha road, the products inside the vehicle is prone to losses, damages, breakages, etc. So businesses need to be very clear that from one point to other, what can be the percentage of breakage that definitely will happen given these certain sectors. Rail is again given more weightage here, but in a country like India, if you take a relative comparison, it can be relooked into. So with this, we see that we'll go to the next part, that is the frequency. Frequency, there's a small asterisk here, so we need to go below and understand what is the meaning of frequency here. It says the frequency means the number of times the mode is available during a given period of time. Now comes the infrastructural support. Infrastructural support is not just businesses providing these facilities, it is a great influence of government, infrastructure and transportation facilities that they provide. So every country needs to develop its infrastructure in order to grow their economy, and India is not at all far behind in this. Well, let's look at the comparison, how it goes. As far as the frequency is concerned, pipeline, maybe very few products can be sent through it. It fares one of the best because it's available at most point of time, because there are no many products going through that, number one. And number two, some pipeline, when it's used, it is used frequently for the same reason. A petroleum, crude oil, it uses pipe. I mean, you can't take any other material in that besides that. So, well, the point number 2 is highway. Frequency of roadways is always better compared to air. That's what they say. Yes, in many countries it is true, especially in a country like India. But if you look at the Indian point of view here, when we take the frequency, well, we can compare road and rail because we have one of the vast networks in the world. Well, of course, these studies have been done abroad, and as you can see, it's run by Roland H. Bellow, who is also has authored a book on supply chain management. Haven't considered much about countries like India here, where the railway network is very vast. Many countries are not having such a well-networked rail as much as India. So here you need to be a little bit cautious whether the frequency availability is road is more or the rail is more. However, given consideration to the other characteristics is equally important. But as far as the frequency, the least frequency concerned is waterways. Yes, water is sea shipment. Ocean vessels, normally they are known as liner services, and liner services work on a very, very scheduled program from having fixed stopovers from one port to the other, and normally they return back to the same port. So there are other services in like tramp services, which is only upon booking, and there are certain services like bulk services. But liner services among the sea shipment having the maximum market share. And as far as ocean vessels are concerned, pre-booking the vessel space or a container depending on the type of the goods is very essential. It is not possible to have a one-day notice and you get a vessel where it is certain, again it's very seasonal. Certain businesses depending on the products, normally during the year end it is a mad rush if you are shipping the goods from one country to the other, because most of the developing countries will be shipping the goods to the developed countries, let's say US or UK, Europe or America. Then because of Christmas purchases and the other festivals that they have, or like Thanksgiving, the demand for products are very high. So most of the shipments leaves the shore of a developing country by October or November, so that it's a 1 month or more voyage time to reach US. And at that point of time, there's a very, very mad rush. That means during those period of shipments, companies need to be careful to do some advance booking. Otherwise, normally during non-peak seasons, they are available. So this picture has to be seen, and you must get an insight and mull over each of the numbers and question whether how it can be as relevant to India. Now, next thing is for dependability, and the least dependable is airlines and the most dependable is pipe, and the other relative figures are roadways and rail and water. So what we send is what we get. Well, that is what it is, and that is dependability. Let's look at capacity. Again, in front of capacity there are two asterisks, and capacity here means the ability of the mode of transport to handle large or heavy goods. This is very important. B2B and some products in B2C are all heavy shipments. Heavy in some terms of volumes. You can call it tonnage, kilos, metric tons, etc. Cardboards, pieces, many other units of measurement. And the most voluminous form of transport is always sea shipment. In fact, most of the ocean liner vessels are having carrying capacity that is measured in what is known as 20-foot equivalent units. We call it 20 feet equivalent unit. That means how much 20 feet size containers can be carried by a vessel. And as on date, couple of decades before, rather I would like to say, it was 5,000, 8,000 containers, but today man-moth vessels sailing from one port to the other port carries more than 16 to 20,000 containers in a single voyage. It drops off at several major ports, offloads some containers meant for that port, and then reloads container that is ready there to be taken to the next port. So as far as capacity in a single voyage, that's what it means here. There is no match for the sea shipment. Even the second rail is not even close to sea shipment. It is a distant second. And the least is pipeline. Well, since many products are not sent through that, we will focus on the next best, that is the air. Yes, air compared to even road or the rail has got a very less capacity, and moreover it is also very costly, and the only benefit from air we get is it is very, very fast. So speedy shipments, air is the most preferred, but we have other considerations also for transporting the goods. At that time, most of the other characteristics needs to be looked into. The last point we look at is the availability of the mode of transport, which is the best is highway. I mean, it is a smooth once the goods are loaded. There is availability of the vehicle, there is availability of the route. Very rarely does it get affected due to natural calamities. This is followed by rail. Then next comes is air. Air is a very, if the weather conditions are bad, no airlines can take off. It gets stranded in a particular airport, whether it's a passenger airlines or even a cargo airlines. Unlike any military airlines, military aircrafts, these two commercial and passenger commercial vehicles, airlines are much affected due to weather conditions. This is the first one is highway, second is rail, third is air, the fourth is water. So again, water was rather again a problematic mode of transport, but now many issues related to the sea shipment is improved due to GPS tracking and other security facilities available. Sea shipment is also a better mode of transport. So with this, we look at all the characteristics available for all modes of transport, which is important in analyzing it. So if I ask, or if you want to ask yourself a question, when will I use a sea shipment? Then you need to know the primary answer will be when the volume of my goods are very, very large. Yes, that's how we need to analyze. Or when will I use the air shipment? It is obvious when the customer requires the goods at a very, very short notice. Okay. So as far as highway, rail is concerned, we focus on other characteristics more because highway and rail are common modes of transport in many countries for domestic purposes. If a country is a landlocked country, that means it is surrounded by all directions, different countries, where they are not exposed to the sea itself, then it becomes imperative for them to use these two modes of transport to move from one country to the other country. However, the intra-transport, that is transportation within the country, not just landlocked country, even countries which are surrounded by sea, a country like America, the sea boundary is very large. Country like India, half the size, if you look at the India's map, then you'll be very clear. We have so many ports. In such cases, highway and rail are largely for domestic transportation, whereas air and water remains for international transportation. Pipe is very, very much restricted to certain products, where it is always advisable to use pipe compared to highway or rail. So that's how it is. Well, for example, water, where there is scarcity of water, then road is the best method to transport water. But there's a capacity problem here, how much a truck can carry water. Through pipe, most of the water supply from public distribution is managed. So with this, we'll look into the goods normally carried by different modes of transport. However, these are only indicative to understand that variety of goods requires different variety of modes of transportation by default, and the previous slide that spoke about evaluation of various modes of transport is also a continuation of this that we are going to discuss now. So rail normally carries extracting industry. When I say extracting, then if you would all might have witnessed one or the other point in your time in your life, coal is the normal product that uses rail from the place of extraction to the nearest depot. And supplying to the other parts of the country, because coal is not available in every state. So it has to receive from one site to the other. So next is heavy manufacturing, agricultural commodities. We have seen rice gunny bags or wheat bags being transported in rail cargo or rail wagon, what we call, from one place to the other. And the next point is the next mode is the road. Well, a road is considered more for the transportation of goods meant from one intermediary to the other. That means once the big chunk of goods come at a common point, the goods are removed and distributed different geographical areas by the middleman from one place to the other till it reaches the retail store, or till it reaches a stockist or a place where companies purchase bulk quantities. So that's where distribution between intermediaries is very important, where road shipment or road is used as a form of transport, because the volumes are not that big and road can carry medium and light manufactured goods also without obstructing other vehicles. This is followed by water. I think in this world any product can be shipped through sea shipment. However, certain expensive items like jewelry or diamonds may not use this because they are so expensive that, and they may be required very fast, and so they can be using other mode of shipment which is expensive. Otherwise, we have different kinds of ocean vessel that carries right from radioactive waste, petroleum, to coal, garments, toys, followed by other products that is mentioned in here. The list is endless. Sea is one of the most versatile form of transportation because it has got various kind of vessels which we'll be studying towards the end, different cargo vessels which can carry different types of goods. It can go in high seas from one country to the other, passing through oceans, or it can go through rivers and canals within the country also. That's why it's the most versatile form of shipment available. Followed by pipeline. Pipeline designated products only, like petroleum or even water. Okay. Well, where there is no pipeline connectivity between two different locations, then definitely for petroleum transportation, sea again is what we call as, in this vessel we call it as tankers, and tankers are used for shipping the crude petroleum. The last mode of transport is your air shipment, and air shipment, as we all know, is very expensive, is meant for premium products or rather emergency products. Maybe some transplantation for a patient in a country has to be carried out, and some requirements of maybe has to be flown from one place to the other, and waiting time is very, very crucial at that time to save the patient's life. That's what we call as emergency. Then air shipment is the most powerful form of shipment. Followed by, we'll look into what is an efficient transportation system, which every country is looking at, because transportation is one of the major polluters and every country is looking at reducing the pollution levels. India is not in a very good position compared to the pollution levels. However, the government is doing its best efforts to reduce wherever possible. And now, looking at transportation as one of the biggest emitters of pollution, lot of initiatives have been taken. We'll look at very few of them that is prescribed by the Niti Aayog. But let us first understand what is the efficient transportation system. It includes all the equipments and logistics for transporting passengers and goods, and that is transportation system. What is efficient? Efficient is when there is smooth and seamless movement of goods, which optimizes time, cost, energy, and very important, greenhouse gas emissions, fuel cost, air pollution, and traffic congestion. All these points that has been mentioned here, optimization of time means efficient transportation. Optimization of cost is transportation. It may be using multiple mode of transportation from one destination to the other. You may use the canal and then road and then rail, or vice versa. So these are multiple modes. So even that comes as cost optimization also. This is followed by energy and greenhouse gas, followed by fuel cost, air pollution. Air pollution is caused by different modes in very different way. I think pipe is the least emitter of air pollution, negligible, whereas we have road that runs on diesel and rail that runs on diesel and coal. Well, electric trains are also consume huge amounts of energy. So these modes of transportation, but however, it also leads to traffic congestion. That means even passenger vehicles have to compete for a space on the road along with these commercial transportation. So traffic congestion again is the biggest emitter of pollution and consumption of energy and fuel. So bringing about an efficient transportation is looking into all the aspects and trying to reduce each one of it, so that there is economic and social opportunities and benefits that result from access to markets, increased employment and other investments. However, this is at a very large outlook. Normally how governments look into any bringing about any such schemes or any such changes to the particular situation. And one of the best, as I was talking, is intermodal transport. It is movement of goods from origin to destination using not one but several modes of transport. Depending on only one mode of transport may sometimes be time consuming, fuel inefficient, energy consumption and also costly. So depending on the benefits of what each of the transportation mode provides, multiple modes of transportation should be used. That means a country should provide connectivity from one mode of transport with the other mode of transport. This is known as intermodal transportation. When governments don't provide such facility, then businesses have to rely on the existing infrastructure. Intermodal transportation combines various methods of transportation and it leads to efficiency, reduced cost, security and fast delivery. Normally in intermodal transportation we have road, we have rail, rivers, canals and sea. So something is left off, pipe and air normally doesn't come. That is the weaker modes of intermodal transport. So what are the benefits of an efficient transportation system? Benefits are several, but this has been grouped into direct, indirect and induced. Again, these are extracted from Niti Aayog's report. A direct impact can be improved efficiency, where transport provides employment and larger markets access and reduces time and also cost for the businesses, so that they can make better profit or increase their production and thereby also or reduce their price and increase the demand. The indirect impacts also is seen because of efficient transportation system, that is accessibility and wide range of value addition like employment. And lastly, there is induced impacts. Because of efficient transport system implementation, it induces a multiplier effects where the prices of goods and services starts reducing in per unit, and because of this consumption increases and many competitors who come and start business in such product or such product category, their variety of products increases. This is what is known as induced impacts. So there are multiplier effects available. And as far as the report from Fast Tracking Freight in India, which is a roadmap for clean and effective goods transport from Niti Aayog, the efficient transportation system material has been extracted from this report. Students are encouraged to look into this report. The concerns for efficient transportation are higher logistic cost in India and internal combustion engine vehicles that are getting obsolete and inefficient mode share and logistics practices. So, well, the government is trying to improve this by reducing the cost of transportation due various means, by shifting the bulk goods movements to rail and usage of truck, which is optimizing it so that it reduces the unit cost. This is followed by bringing in more efficient vehicles and cleaner fuels, alternative fuels, followed by running electric vehicles, so reduce the carbon emission. Followed by the last point is improve the mode share and operational efficiency by what we call as mode split. So a mode share is basically which mode of transport as a percentage is used compared to all the available mode of transport to reach from one point to the other. This is typically what we call as mode share or mode split. By doing an analysis of the mode split, the government can see how much businesses are able to shift from one mode to the other to reach the goods quickly, efficiently, with least energy consumption and fuel cost, the destination quickly. So this is known as improving the operational efficiency by first mode splitting. So this is what are the characteristics of the new freight ecosystem and the impact that it can carry as per the government. We complete the transportation part of the unit of warehouse and transportation. Thank you.